Greetings and welcome to another lecture in comparative psychology. When last I recorded, we were talking about what prey do when they encounter predators, and I talked about a couple of different techniques that animals might use to try to hide from predators that they have detected. And so I'm going to continue with that because there are more techniques that I didn't really have a chance to go over. Other things that prey do when they encounter predators is something along the lines of playing dead. Now, technically, playing dead is known as tonic immobility. Tonic comes from the same sort of root word as muscle tone. And so the odds are here what's happening is the individual just goes limp and plays dead. Although sometimes they don't go limp, there is at least one species of snake that is somehow convinced, presumably by pre-programming, that dead snakes lay on their backs. And if you take this snake and you roll it over onto its stomach when it's playing dead, it will immediately roll back over onto its back. The snake obviously doesn't realize, because it's not a conscious thing, that maybe it might just be better not to move. But if you've been thinking about, opossums are notorious for supposedly playing dead, that sort of thing. There are a number of species that play dead in the hopes that perhaps they won't be located. It's difficult to sometimes combine this with hiding or freezing, although playing dead is usually you flop down and, there's a difference between that and freezing and being ready to bolt at a moment's notice. There does seem to be a negative correlation, in some species anyway, between playing dead and the ability to flee effectively. In other words, if the animal can flee really efficiently, it's much less likely to play dead than those individuals that cannot flee. Those individuals that cannot flee because they are slow moving or because of, whatever other reason that they simply cannot flee and they may not have armor or anything else to protect them, they're going to be more likely to play dead. The example I bring up here is not let's put it this way. When I see that, I always think of humans and bears. I spent quite a bit of time of my life in Glacier National Park, where humans and bears both roam the same territory, although the bears were indeed there first. And there's always this idea that if you see a bear, you're supposed to play dead. It's actually gotten to the point that it's almost become a joke. I've seen it in cartoons. Well, playing dead is only really useful in certain situations. And the only real situation that it's useful for is if you are being attacked by a grizzly bear. Grizzly bears, very often when they attack, they are not interested in eating you. They are interested in protecting themselves from you, protecting their cubs from you, or getting you off their territory. In other words, they want to make you less of a threat. And so it can happen with grizzly bears that if one plays dead, which sometimes require, by the way, gruesome details ahead, which sometimes require staying still when the bear is chewing on you, that more people are likely to survive than actively fighting back. Fighting back with the grizzly bear usually seems to indicate to the bear that you are indeed more of a threat and that it should take care of you. As I said, this is true for grizzly bears. For those who live in the countryside where there are no grizzly bears and there are black bears, this does not apply. Because black bears can usually be scared off simply by making yourself big and making loud noises. The same is true for cougars. It may not be true for grizzly bears. For grizzly bears, it's better to just kind of back away slowly. But if black bears get to the point where they actually attack you, then they want to eat you. Grizzly bears, for the most part, do not want to eat you. They want to go eat, other things and be left in peace. But if black bears are actively attacking people, they generally want to eat them. So it's much better to fight it off. If you can't scare off a black bear, you need to fight it off. With grizzly bears, you want to back off. If that doesn't work, then you play dead. Notice how, for instance, at that point, that playing dead, if it's a black bear, it's probably not a good idea because you're simply making the meal easier for the bear. So, yes, in any case, if you can flee, again, slowly is better. that's for the best. But if you're in a situation where you cannot flee, where, for instance, a grizzly bear has already attacked you, then playing dead may well be useful. Otherwise, it's better to try other things. I mentioned in the prior video that signaling to the predators that they are seen is something that prey animals can do. I mentioned gazelles. But there's other reason that they're going to have the signaling. For instance, when we were talking about, again, back in the learning chapter, we were talking about learning to avoid, how birds learn to avoid monarch butterflies because monarch butterflies are so brightly colored. In that case, the bright coloration in itself is a warning. It's a warning to the predator that if you eat me, you're going to get really sick. So whether it's a monarch butterfly, whether it's arrow poison frogs, whether it's some other species where bright colors basically indicate don't eat me, that is also, a signal. And sometimes animals will just make themselves look even more dramatic. I know that there, for instance, is a type of moth that if it flicks its wings the right way, the wings have eyes on them to make the predators think that they have been seen. Which brings me to signaling to the predator that I see you. This is the gazelle spotting. This is the moths with the eyes on their wings to freak out predators, make predators think they've been seen. And it basically tells the predator, as I mentioned in the earlier video, that if you are hoping for an easy meal, you better keep moving because I see you and it's not going to be easy. But there is something else that it could also be signaling to the predator, because on occasion, when prey are spotted by a predator is approaching them and so forth, sometimes the prey can fight back. I was talking in an earlier video about how wolves have problems trying to catch, for instance, healthy elk or deer or moose, particularly moose. Moose are probably some of the deadliest animals in the woods. They will take you out without a second thought, and they can do it. Even deer can do a lot of damage. There have been people who have been killed by deer, both wild and tame, because the deer attacked them. They have sharp hooves. They can cut you. They can trample you. It's pretty ugly. And if an animal is cornered, it's much more likely then to attack. It's the last ditch of what it can do. Or what you should do, for instance, with a black bear. Same idea. So there's physical fighting back, which does happen. It can happen in any of a number of ways, from everting spines to make it harder for the prey or the prey to be eaten. There's any of a number of things that prey do to fight back. Some of the more noteworthy things that they might do are various types of chemical defenses. You almost certainly know about skunks and their chemical defenses. Skunks are members of the weasel families, and weasels generally stink. They do not smell good. They all have these highly potent scent glands. But skunks have taken that a step further, in that they can actually eject the really stinky fluid that they have in these glands and spray it at a predator, which not only smells awful, but at close range can temporarily blind the individual. It's not good for your eyes, and it doesn't help your breathing, and generally it allows the skunk to then escape. And anyone who's sprayed by a skunk, for the most part, unless you're really, really sneaking up on it and you really startle it, has only themselves to blame, because skunks give lots of warning when they are about to spray you. The last warning, by the way, and this is true for a lot of skunks, is they will stand on their front paws, they'll stand on their front legs and sort of arc the tail, because the scent gland is by the anus and near the tail, and they'll arc their tail kind of over their heads and fire at you, because they don't want to get that stuff on themselves either. So they make sure that they get pretty much all the parts of their body that they can out of the way before they let fire. We also have bombardier beetles, and your text goes into some detail about these guys. These guys are crazy, because these beetles have actually evolved. They have two chemical substances that alone are okay, but if the beetle is attacked, they will literally combine these two substances and form a bomb. I mean, it's an acidic and it's horrible and it's loud and it's just a little hand grenade kind of thing, which tends to drive off predators, needless to say. When you've got an acrid hand grenade blowing up when you're trying to eat, you're just trying to eat a beetle, you're probably not going to eat it anymore. By the way, cockroaches also taste really, really, really bad. They don't have that sort of bombs away thing that the bombardier beetles do, but they taste horrible. So animals that have a fairly good sense of taste don't really want to be eating cockroaches. I don't recommend it. I heard a story once of a friend who got a cockroach in a burrito once, and let's just say that he's never eaten burrito since, because the taste was so incredibly vile. I mentioned mobbing in the earlier video, and mobbing is essentially what happens in a lot of cases when birds see a predator. They actually will go toward it and dive bomb it and fly around it. And if there's enough of them and they dive bomb fast enough, the predator can't really catch them. You see this a lot with crows versus bald eagles. And in fact, this is crows versus any predators. But this video here that's also on the sheet is a crow versus bald eagle mobbing, where you hear the crows, they are screaming, and they are literally zipping by this eagle so fast that the eagle can't catch them. And they harass the eagle to the point that the eagle needs to leave. A lot of birds do this to predators. They will do it to eagles and hawks and owls. They will do it to cats. They'll do it to people. There have been some videos recently of birds that when human beings go by their nesting site, the birds basically swoop and attack. And if they do so quickly enough, most of them can, they can do some fairly serious damage, and they can come out of nowhere. And so this sort of mobbing or this attacking is not unusual. And the difference between this and general fighting back is that in mobbing, the predator does not have to be attacking these birds first. The birds will actually mob before the predator has a chance to attack in the hopes of driving that predator off. And in general, it can be very, very successful, as you will see if you decide to watch this little film clip.